people knew me as a workhorse, and that would bring, like, I would light up anytime somebody mentioned my work ethic. That was it. That's all I needed. I felt whole in those moments. I wore it like a badge of honor. I don't need sleep. I can do 3-4 hours a night. I can do that consistently, day over day, week over week. Why is everybody always talking about sleep? I don't need it. I'll sleep when I'm dead. I remember saying these things. I remember being in the kitchen with my wife after dinner, and the kids were sort of winding down in the other room, and all of a sudden I had trouble breathing. It just came on, really sharp, acute pains in the chest, and those were on the left side. And I thought, hey, something's not right here. I literally thought I was dying.
You explained how you come from a Portuguese family and that there was this like really strong work ethic. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, my background, my parents are immigrants from the Azores Islands that they're a part of Portugal, and the people from those islands, they deal with a lot of hardship. They're farmers, and it's tough weather, it's earthquakes, it's volcanoes, it's famine, it's crop disease. And so my ancestors are cut from that cloth. And, they came to the States looking for a better life. I was the first one born here in my family. And as the firstborn, first male born, I think there's a sense of responsibility and duty, and even an expectation that you're going to work hard, that you're going to accomplish many things, that you're going to be successful, and you're going to build on sort of your parents' dream. And so from a very young age, I had a lot of pressure, not just from my family, but eventually from within myself. I internalized that pressure. My expectations of myself were extremely high. And so that work ethic, that sense of responsibility, that sense of obligation and owingness to that family legacy, like, drove me to get degrees, to try to get the best job I could, to work all hours of the night, to pick up side jobs and start side businesses. It always felt like it was never enough. No matter what I had or what I had achieved, I always wanted more. And a lot of that stems from, I think, that cultural, traditional upbringing that I mentioned. My childhood wasn't perfect by any means. And I think, my dad, in feeling his own pressure to create a life for his family and be successful and be an earner, he put a lot of pressure on us. And in order for me to survive and thrive, I had to put a really tough exterior on myself. And I felt responsible for my younger siblings. And so in protecting myself, I started to kind of push down it's sad to say now when I think about it, but I had to push down my emotions. I had to bottle it up. I had to distract myself by burying myself in schoolwork or work or whatever project I was on.
And so like you found something that you were really good at, and that almost kind of worked against you, this thing that you were passionate about. So take me a little bit back to that time.
Music was it. I think I started humming and drumming before I started speaking. And so there was something innate in me from a very early age. And that, yeah, it was a passion, and then it became a source of, like, refuge. And when things got tough and when things got hard, I knew I could lean in and sort of close the door and go down a rabbit hole and listen to music and feel through the music, through the lyrics, through the tones and textures. And leaning really hard into music, it just became, I mean, for better or worse, it was fuel. It was purpose. It was a source that I could tap into. Like, I love music. I feel this connection. I want to work in music. And so everything became about, all right, how do I get closer to this thing? How do I get myself entrenched in the business of music? And then from there, you study, you go to school, you work a bunch of internships, you grind really hard, you get a gig. And because you're passionate, because you love it, maybe it doesn't feel like work. Maybe you're willing to do 12, 15, 18, 20 hours a day. Maybe you'll grind in the day and you'll go to shows at night because it's all part of the thing.
And it feels good at the time. I know, I've been there too.
Yeah, no, it felt good at the time. I think I've had to shift to a place where I have to bring a greater awareness into my relationship with music so that it doesn't overconsume me.
Yeah. Oh yeah, well, there's the learning in it from all of this. Yeah.
And the sleep thing, that was like, the funny thing is, and I was talking with my wife about this the other day, because now I go to bed at 9 o'clock every night, 9:30. But I wore it like a badge of honor. I don't need sleep. I can do 3-4 hours a night. I can do that consistently, day over day, week over week. Why is everybody always talking about sleep? I don't need it. I'll sleep
Yeah.
when I'm dead. I remember saying these things in my 20s and even for a good chunk of my 30s. Yeah, and that's just not a healthy way to approach it. So,
You said that you saw some like warning signs in your body like back in February. What were these signs that you noticed, and how did you handle them at the time?
yeah. So, taking a look back, February of 2021 is when I experienced sort of this sensation of hitting a wall, hitting a brick wall. And what that felt like to me was, you know, muffled hearing and blurred vision and chest pains that came on really strongly and suddenly and unexpectedly. There was just this sort of feeling that something was off, and it was intense, and it was something that I had never experienced before. I mean, there had been little moments and things that had wavered throughout the course of my career where I had to kind of pump the brakes or slow down a little bit, but nothing quite like this, which was pretty much like a huge wake up call. Like one of those, hey, stop what you're doing now, reassess everything. This might be it. You might be dying. Make peace with your family. I can laugh now, but at the time it was very, very scary. My wife is a nurse, which is wonderful. And I told her, hey, something's not right here. I'm having some really sharp pains here in my chest. I think I'm having some heart issues. I don't have a history of that. I've always stayed in relatively good shape and played sports and everything. I eat decently. So I thought, this has got to be something bad. Like, is this the end of my life? Like, what's it going to be like when my kids have to grow up without a dad? What's it going to be like for me when I'm no longer here for them? And it was just a lot of very difficult emotions to process, and actually had an ambulance or a fire truck come by the house to check on me. I probably repeated that same process 2, 3, 4 times. Each time would result in me ending up in an emergency room and them hooking me up to machines and monitoring my heart and running tests and doing blood work. It led to a whole bunch of misdiagnoses in the beginning, but eventually getting to a point where the doctor thought, hey, this is stress related. These physical manifestations are coming from somewhere deep in your psychological, emotional mind. So, yeah.
You said you had experienced this like a few times, but had you ever thought that this might have something to do with the way you were living your life at that time?
No, not at first. Not for one moment did I consider the fact that my lifestyle was at the root cause of everything I was feeling. And so those
Mm-hmm.
first few weeks, I mean, I was sure of myself that they're going to find something seriously wrong
Mm-hmm.
if they run the right test. But yeah, every time things would subside, I'd get sent home, and then I would sort of be in this limbo, a hyper stressed sort of state of being where I couldn't work, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. And I was almost dreading, when is the next time one of these things, this next wave is going to wash in, and then I'll be
Mm.
back in the emergency room trying to figure out what it was. So there was a lot of that type of energy. Yeah.
Yeah. So you didn't really make any changes in terms of the way you were living your life yet at that point.
Not at first. Finally got to a place with the doctor where he suggested that I reach out to a therapist. And that was something that I had never done before. And it was in those first few conversations with my doctor and with the therapist that this opening up, or this awakening to this awareness of the fact that, yeah, maybe this is something that's self-inflicted. And then I did drastically change everything. That's when I took a leave of work and really started to change the way I was looking at things.
And you had said too, you had multiple W-2s. So that means like you were working all kinds of contracts, you're doing all sorts of gigs. Something inside of you was driving that. What do you think that was?
I needed to feel like I was doing something significant. And that was my identity. Like, people knew me as a workhorse, and that would bring, like, I would light up anytime somebody mentioned my work ethic. that was it. That's all I needed. I felt whole in those moments when people would talk about how hard I was working. So yeah, that was there.
I understand that you are a senior on your team. So I'd love to know a little bit about like your current role and just the industry overall, and like how there's this like striving and achieving and how that all kind of connects.
I find myself now as a senior program manager on our team, a team that's focused on music operations. And without getting into too many details, it's really about helping folks discover music, have greater access to music um, across a variety of surfaces. So, sort of in the middle of all of that work. Now, about tech is a beast, it waits for no one. It grows, it evolves, it changes exponentially all of the time. Tech is not just pushing tech forward, it's really transforming humanity and how we relate to one another and ourselves and the planet, for better or worse. And within the tech industry, well, there's this hyper competitive profile of person that they seek out. So when we hire, we look for the person who's going to thrive in ambiguity, who's going to roll up their sleeves, and who loves this stuff so much that this is their life. And so you live to work, oftentimes, sadly, within tech. It's given so much to me, but it's also taken a lot because it's fast paced, it's demanding, it's globally dispersed. What the problems that we're solving are global in nature. It's just massive stakes, massive responsibility, and it's a lot of people who all have a chip on their shoulder that they need to succeed, that they need to accomplish. When you put a lot of people like that together that are very driven in that way, it just creates this energy that's like a vortex that you get sucked in. Like everybody's overworking themselves. So how do I shine in an environment where everyone's a rock star? Shit, I gotta be the rock star's rock star.
When you think about things are going amazing, you're like on top of the world, it's almost like we become, I'm going to use the word addicted to the work, addicted to that creative energy that we're outputting at that time. At one point though, you said that this all shifted for you when you had these physical manifestations and stuff was happening to you. You just didn't even want to be with people. You said it was like a light switch, like things like tell us a little bit about what happened there, because you even said that people that in your life were like praying for you.
Yeah.
So take us back there for a moment.
So yeah, the really intense physical manifestations, like literally thought I was dying. So what do? I have to stop everything. I write in to my manager, I need time. And and so I took an extended break, and I'm not sure how long it was at that time. It might have been 2 full months. And it was then that I kick off what I now refer to as sort of this transformation, this metamorphosis. But at the time, it certainly didn't feel like it. At the time, it was about survival. And I knew I needed to stop everything that was stressing me out in any way. And so, in the interest of surviving and stopping the pain, I literally stopped doing everything. I stopped leaving the house. I started sitting around under a beautiful pine tree I have in the backyard, just sitting in quiet retrospection, like silence, simplicity. I needed to quiet all of the noise down, all of that swirling energy. It took a little while to dissolve, but over the days and the weeks and the months, it started to. As I did that, I felt my system starting to soothe, and then it no longer felt like fight or flight or survival or that I was dying. And then from that point on, I started to explore a little bit. Well, what are some things that I can do for myself to build some resilience, to explore more deeply? And this is when, I mentioned the therapy, right? I started talking to a therapist weekly and exploring past experiences and traumas and revisiting things that I never had revisited in years. I started doing meditation. I started doing qigong. I started journaling. I started doing acupuncture. I started shifting away from a more Western view of life in like accumulation of material. And I started to kind of absorb more Eastern philosophies. And that was very, very different from me. But with that shift, peace started to come, right? Health and well being started to come. I stopped going places. I stopped hanging with all of the friends. All of my side businesses, I put a halt on. the work I stopped. I really needed to just kind of sort things out in that time period.
How did you even know that you needed to do that? Did you already have the stress diagnosis at that point, or was it you just knew that I gotta pull back, I gotta like tap out here for a bit?
The doctor mentioned it, and in talking with the therapist, she's like, yeah, like you've got all this stuff you've been holding on to. We need to start to tease this apart. And then also just intuitively, it felt right. I got out of my head. I got out of my ego. I got out of my expectation and obligation of myself. And I found myself really feeling from my heart center at that point in time. It was all intuition and instinct, and really opening myself up to receive signals that were all, I feel, have been coming my way the entire time, but I was too busy, overworked, distracted, unhealthy to receive any of them. And so for the first time, I shook everything like an Etch-a-Sketch, and now I'm getting these signals from beyond, and they're guiding me in a very positive, healthy direction.
Yeah, and it sounds like you were like super like open-minded too to exploring and trying and experimenting with different things, and that was a great mindset to have when it came to this, that's for sure.
And when people ask me about that stage, I refer to it as a metamorphosis, because I really keyed in on this visual of the caterpillar going into the cocoon. He's still the caterpillar. He has changed shape, and now he's sort of protected himself for this greater transformation. That period, those months, those 6 months were me in the cocoon state, where I had to protect myself and shield myself.
That belief that you had, this like I have to prove myself, I've got to like work really hard, that's a core belief, and so like how did you actually shift that belief?
It's a work in progress, and so you're never fully there, but as long as you kind of cultivate that self-awareness, that self-consciousness, in my case, if you do the well-being practices that can soothe your system enough so that you can stay centered and grounded and have that self-awareness, then I feel like there's plenty of possibility to move into this type of energy and way of being. Does that make sense how I'm describing it? I know it's a bit out there, but
yeah, well, that's the thing, is it's hard, right? I mean, like we're going to have people who are listening that can identify and see themselves exactly in the shoes that you were in, and they maybe even have some of those physical signs and know that they too need to make that shift or that change. But I think saying that we need to do it and actually doing it are two different things. Like it's hard to do it. So like, what's that first step even to make that shift?
It is hard, and you have to, part of making peace with all of this was making peace with the hard stuff, the darkness, the shadow. And that's where the beauty of the therapy and also some of the other things that I've done and allowed me to step into the dark places, the traumatic experiences, so that I could look at them and feel them and heal them, as opposed to kind of push them away or resist or look away, right? So the reason why I mentioned that is because finding myself in this place where I feel at so much more peace and acceptance of myself required a great deal of willingness to step into the parts of myself that I wasn't proud of, the things that I was ashamed of, the things that I was hurt by, to then build that self-love and that self-acceptance of the whole. I'm not just the best elements of myself, I'm also the worst elements of myself. Can I appreciate those and hold space for them?
You had said like it was almost like my operating system went on the fritz there. And then now you're still, you have a family, you've got a high degree of responsibility. How do you know when that operating system is at the capacity and it's about to shut down again?
In cultivating that greater self-awareness and feeling more connected to myself and understanding what those early warning signs are, I can catch it now before it gets ramped up too far. There's thoughtfulness and intention there. There's like a commitment to myself. I'm committed to myself. I love myself. I want to take care of myself. I want to honor myself. And so when I feel things starting to build up, ramp up, then I know. Let's take a step back. Let's connect with the breath. Let's go on a mindful walk. Let's take a day off work. Let's take a week off work, right? Let's do a little bit of let's invest in some preventative health and well-being. We have a lot of steps and measures that we can put in place before we ever get to that point, if you're willing to. And so, like, for me, that's how I approach it now.
I think a lot of people who are in leadership positions or in management positions think that they can't make a difference in this way, and that nothing's going to matter anyways. And so, like, what have you carried forward, and how is this influencing your, what you're doing in the workplace from your own journey?
There's an energy that I bring now, that, and a way of being authentic, of stepping into these workspaces with authenticity and integrity, with softness, with lightheartedness, with detachment, with these things that I've cultivated because of my burnout and my journey back. When I bring those things forward into the workspace, first and foremost, it's just giving other people permission to do the same. Because it takes 1, 2, 3 people to start living and approaching work in that way. And then you kind of snowball, you see other people kind of relating to you differently. Oh, we can do that. We can act that way. We can speak that way. Oh, I can take a few days and say it's for mental health. Oh, we can talk openly about these issues that we're going through. Yeah, we're humans. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like, how do you see people responding to it?
In a very positive way. For me, I feel it like I feel a strong sense of duty to pay it forward. So it is very rewarding to see people respond in this positive way, and to have folks set up one-on-one time with me, like recurring meetings. We're just going to talk life. We're just going to talk healing. We're going to talk health, well-being. We're not going to talk work projects. I have a ton of those on my calendar with a bunch of people from a bunch of different teams. Once they find out, like, that I'm about this stuff and that I've gone through this, they see a safe space. They see an opening to kind of open up and share. And a lot of the healing comes from just being heard and seen. Like, if you can just talk about what you're feeling, the frustrations you're experiencing, man, that just, like, that releases pressure. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, people feel a lot more comfort in speaking this way with me, which is wonderful.
What would you say to the leaders out there, or the people in management who say, who has time to talk about, take an hour to talk about mental health or like our feelings or things like that? I mean, when you're so focused on like the bottom line and productivity and performance and ROI.
Say you can do both. And if you invest, the thing is, I don't see investing in health and well-being as a loss in productivity. I see it as it's an investment in the longevity, sustainability of your team. And to those leaders, I say, be forthright, be open. Are you struggling? We all are. Don't pretend like you're not. Be open with your team. Yeah, we're struggling. We're being asked to deliver a lot this quarter. Let's put it out there. Let's own it. Let's rally around each other. Let's share with each other. Let's be vulnerable with each other. I'd love to see leaders setting an example where their teams feel comfortable being vulnerable around them, because the leaders themselves are being vulnerable with their teams. And I think from that you can create a culture where people feel safe, people feel supported, and then through that trust and rapport, I think people will give more of themselves in the right ways because they feel like you have their back as a leader. So yeah, step forward with more authenticity, with integrity, with compassion and understanding for your teams. Like, yeah, put the heart out there, lead with heart.
I guess my last question I just want to ask you here before we close is, let's just imagine that, you had this like whole room of like thousands of like creators and artists and people who are like super passionate about their jam. And I gave you a mic and I said, Jason, you've got 60 seconds to say something to this group of people. What would you say to them?
Damn, that is hard, Shelly-Anne, because like, am I wearing the hat? Okay, am I wearing the hat of like YouTube Corp? Like, here's how you become successful on the platform, or am I wearing the hat of
You're wearing the
like,
hat of Jason.
yeah, Jason the human right now at this
Yeah.
point in my journey?
Yeah.
Like,
What
I
would you
would
say?
I would say like, stay connected to yourself, right? Because you can look all around, you can look left, you can look right, and you can go, this person's got more subscribers than me, they got more likes than me, they're doing big time things. I want to be like them. You can look outside for external validation. This doesn't really jive with like company policy, but like, I really want people to look for that internal, intrinsic validation, that staying connected with yourself, listening. And I know this sounds cliche, but if you can really cultivate that connection to your heart, and you know when something is off, and you know when you're stepping in a direction that you shouldn't be stepping, and you know when it's not you and it doesn't feel authentic or true, trust that feeling, because there's something deeper there that's guiding the ship. Are you willing to listen to it? Because your ego can override those decisions. I can go left when my heart and soul are telling me to go right. So I would tell those creators to listen to what they really want, that purpose, that dharma, their spirit, their soul, because I think if they do that, then yeah, it'll just be a healthier, happier, more sustainable journey for them.
Listen to that inner voice. Yeah, like you're saying, listen to that inner voice. And you're right, because it does tell you that. Like, you're like, oh, you probably should go to bed. But then you're like, nah, set it for a few more hours. Or no, I'll just like write music for a few more hours. Or I'll just, yeah. But so really listening to that inner voice, because I think you're right that it is really trying to guide us. That sometimes our drive and our passion can override that. But it sounds like we all need to listen.
Thank you, Shelly.
Fantastic. Well, enjoy the rest of your weekend with the kids. And thank you so much. Bye.